Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. And I hope you can hear me, but I'm still going very slow on my Wi-Fi. So it's really more of a podcast because I'm moving very slow on the screen. So I'll try to reboot. But today I wanted a chance to welcome you to Roku and Pod TV's World Edition, where we talk about global affairs, innovation, and increasingly turbulent world and politics. And here today in the United States of America, I greet you live from Morrisville, North Carolina, the eighth largest state in the United States of America. If there's any word to describe the United States Congress today, it's turmoil and turbulence, those two words. Kevin McCarthy, who was the projected Speaker of the House in the new Republican-led House of Representatives, is unable to become Speaker after a 6th vote. The drama has been very intense. I was there just a few days ago, and Congressman Wiley Nickel hasn't even been sworn in yet, along with the many other members of the North Carolina delegation, including Deborah Ross, because they have no speaker. They cannot even do the work of the American people. There's nobody to strike down the gavel. Now, I wanted to take a moment to remind ourselves that revolution and revolt within the Republican Party actually is something that we have actually become used to. We saw this when Paul Ryan and John Boehner left the speaker's offices during the Tea Party movement, and a whole new rise of Republicans that came in that were much more right-wing than moderate Republicans. But now we're seeing the same effect, and I think part of it could be looking at the midterm elections. The midterm elections, if they told us anything, were that Republicans were just simply not willing to rubber stamp Donald Trump, former President Trump's nominees that he was nominating, or candidates that he was nominating. And they wanted to really get away from having the extreme right of the Republican Party total control. So the Republicans barely won with a few votes, but that would presume that we would have McCarthy as Speaker. I think the biggest takeaway from this situation is that that midterm effect is actually spilled over now into the House of Representatives. The concern for Republicans is if it's taking this long to get a Speaker, this could hold up things like raising the debt ceiling, budget negotiations, and just 4 or 5 votes in the House could hold the Speaker hostage. He'll be a very weak Speaker with an ability to really get things done, not only with his party, but the other side of the aisle. Now, Kevin McCarthy had weeks to come up with his delegation, his majority team, and he simply failed time and time again. Is it time for him to withdraw his nomination? Will he have time to pull more votes? But more importantly, what message does this send to the rest of the world? We'll be back to talk about this in other edition here on New World Edition. Mark, bring them in. I've got to run. I'll be right back. Thank you.
Sounds great. We're going to bring in the other folks and see what they've got to talk about. And all along those lines, I know we've got Chris Greco and a number of other folks that are here as well, including Shaquille from Down Under. And of course, we've got Sasha Starr and definitely Lee Newton Rhodes as well. So definitely, I don't know.
Hey, Mark, I'm here too. I'm here too.
Oh, and Dan Worthington. I'm sorry, I did not want to leave Dan Worthington out in that regards at all. So my apologies, Dan, for slighting you in that regards, because Dan is always doing great things and having great comments as well. So my apologies there. But I don't know if people had any thoughts about what Steve was talking about with the continual push to get a leader there out of Congress, and particularly the House of Representatives, and whether they will have one before the end of the week or maybe the end of this particular month. And of course, we've got other parts of the world that are also having folks that are at each other's throats as well, because I've been reading these news stories about what's going on in England, because apparently Prince Harry has accused William of a physical attack in a new book and all in that kind of line. So I guess that there could be whole kind of arguments and tit-a-tats, not just here in the United States, but also in other parts of the world as well. So any thoughts on that, or on the whole notion of what's going on with the House of Representatives? And I was going to bring up another part of the world, and I know that Chris probably got some folks that he wants to bring up as well, but I did see that one of the folks over there in Europe has embraced a Brexit slogan with "Take Back Control," that being Keir Starmer. And apparently in his first speech of 2023, he was saying that university tuition fees are burdening the young people over there in Britain and all in that way. But that's just some of the news that I had seen, and I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts around that.
Mark, I'm just curious, why is this all being done in the public open? And why is this guy who can't get elected going time after time after time after just give it up? It's just more of the same anyways. People don't want more of the same. Look where it's gotten us as a country and as a party.
Well, that's true, and I would argue that I think I've said this to Shaquille before, that no matter what people's attitudes are about Trump or Obama, I think that both of them got a lot of support, because there is a lot of the population that is frustrated by business as usual, as you call it, Lee, and I think that a lot of other folks have been frustrated by that as well, and they would like to see less of the lobbyists and the power brokers in control, in the sense of who's controlling the pocketbooks and all in that space, and actually have people in Congress that were doing the business of the people. But that's just my thoughts, and I don't know if others agree or disagree.
So I think we need to understand worldwide what is most important in people's lives. So on my share screen, I have Google Trends, and I have 5 things up here: the Russo-Ukrainian War, Chuck Hughes, Damar Hamlin, Buffalo Bills, and Kevin McCarthy. So let's take a look and see what is the number one thing. Well, that would be Damar Hamlin, because he's in the hospital. And my God, he's in critical condition. And oh my God, it's just everyone's crying. And geez, what are we going to do now? And this guy had all kind of problems. Maybe he didn't. Maybe it goes on and on and on. Where's the Ukraine war in all this? Ukraine war is like barely there. It's barely here. The Russo-Ukraine war, 89 Russians died. Now, Sasha, I know you're sad about that. About the 89. Now it went from 63 to 89, and probably it's not gonna increase at all. And it was because, of all things, it wasn't that the Russians were right near the ammo dump. They had a barracks in the ammo dump. There was a barracks there. Oh, hey, where would you like to sleep? Oh, right next to ammo, because of course that's the safest place, of course, that we could have. In fact, let me get on my cell phone right now and call my mom, because I'm going to say, well, we got a great place to live. It's right in an ammo dump. What kind of idiots are... So anyways, so you got Damar Hamlin and Chuck Hughes. Now, who is Chuck Hughes? That's interesting. Chuck Hughes died on the field in 1971 with the Detroit Lions, when the Detroit Lions played the Chicago Bears, in front of Dick Butkus, the Chicago Bears coach, and he was never revived. It turned out to be atherosclerosis that they forgot, that they misdiagnosed. But basically, this guy died on the field. Who's heard of Chuck Hughes? Nope, never heard of him. Damar Hamlin, though, oh my God, yes, we all know he is the number one search worldwide now. I thought I'd go off the United States, and I thought it might go down. It's actually gone up. Look at this. Wow. And where's the Ukraine war? Down here. I mean, no wonder. We have, I swear to God, we have the attention span of a gnat. If the situation exists where we can't, what are we worried about? Oh, let's worry about Kevin McCarthy. Let's worry about the House. I could give a crap less if the House of Representatives ever gets out of gridlock, ever. And Dan, you got to agree with me on this one. The more gridlock you got, the less laws you got. The less laws you got, the less crap.
Yeah, but I'm going to make a prediction, and I think you guys will think I'm crazy, but I think McCarthy is actually going to get elected. And I think reason is the Republicans are at sooner or later going to realize it's embarrassing the hell out of them to do this. Now he's going to have to make a lot of concessions to the right, so he's going to be a pretty weak speaker.
Dan?
But I think he's going to get elected.
Dan, I take exception to what you said, and I'll tell you why. I think what we have now are some Republicans with a spine, and they're not willing to bend.
That goes for all Republicans. That goes for all.
No, it does not. No, it does not go for all Republicans. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a budget that was just passed.
No, there are Democrats, because they're the ones that are creating all this havoc and creating a harm for all Americans. Well, maybe it's because it's not that they're spineless; they're just evil, right?
Well,
What the establishment hates most or fears most is a politician with a spine and a conviction to the Constitution and God.
Yeah, they normally
That's what the establishment does not want.
Exactly.
Interestingly enough, the Democrats, they got fooled back. They still remember the 60s when the Dixiecrats basically just messed them over. And the Democrats, when they do something, you notice they always do it as a block. They do it as Democrats, period. They pass everything as Democrats. Very, 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 very few Democrats actually go away from that vote. The Democrats vote as a block. Totally. Republicans, they had the Tea Party. They had the, now they got this, 5 or 6 or 20 or whatever it is that they've decided that they're going to have they're going to have, vote as a block. If you vote as a block, guess what? Things get done. If you start putzing around and you start sitting there saying, "Oh, we 5 are gonna have a problem," you notice that the 5, what do they call it? The squad. I mean, they're always out there, blah, 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 but when they vote together, and that is what Democrats have done ever since the 1960s.
Hey,
and
Mark, why can't the Republicans sit down privately and work this out? Why is it being done publicly?
Well, I'll tell you why. It's because the Republicans believe in being able to express differences. So they're okay. They're okay with having these little blocks here and there and there and there. The Democrats, when they'll bring in those little blocks and they'll say, guess what? Do you want money for your next reelection? If you want money from the Democratic Party, by God, you're going to vote Democrat. And this is what you're going to do. And all of a sudden, everybody gets in line.
Hey, Chris, just a quick question. How did this voting as a block work and everything? Because I'm actually going to probably shock Shaquille and maybe even shock Dan and everything. But I know that there are several groups, including the African American group, that have historically voted as a block. And actually, I've had family members that have been Republicans, and I've actually thought that was a great thing to have actually diversity within a block as well, because sometimes a block can become too connected to a party. And I would actually argue that is part of what has happened with the African American community and the Democrats. So actually, I do not mind people like the one from the Republican, this lieutenant governor here, and others. And actually, one of my mom's late friends was a very very involved and very much of an advocate within the Republican Party. So I actually think that having a voice in the various parties is a great thing, and I wish that we did more voices in that space, because we can sometimes get stuck in one lane and only stay in that one lane.
And I agree with you, I agree with you. But unfortunately, in situations like this, where you don't have enough of a majority to basically tell those 5 Republicans, go pound sand, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm still going to have the 225 or whatever it is I need to be able to be Speaker of the House. The problem is those 5 know now it's 20 know.
It's more than 5, right?
Right. And now it's 20 that have basically said, no, we don't want Kevin McCarthy. And it's like, cut me a break then. Get Steve Scalise, get somebody else up there. I don't give a crap. At this point, they're adjourned. And you know what they said? And my wife told me this, and I have to look this up, is that they're not getting paid. And I thought, well, first of all, yay. They shouldn't get paid for doing crap like this. That's number one. But you know damn well that what's going to happen is that when it comes time, they are the keepers of the purse. So guess who's going to get paid finally? When the whole situation goes, settles out and whatever else, you will sit down and pay yourselves, because that's what you're going to do, because that's what everyone does.
I'm sorry, you think Congress is the keeper of the purse? Do they utilize that, or do they don't take advantage of that?
Oh, hell.
Do they tell the FBI, yeah. Sorry, we're not going to. I don't see them doing that. I see them always funding everything and just rubber stamping. They don't really do the work. They just take whatever they're told to do and they just approve it.
Yeah, I mean, they have to, if they don't fund the FBI goes down. If they don't fund the IRS,
so maybe we need to do that now. The FBI is so corrupt.
I agree with you. I was a federal government employee. I agree with you. Things should be done. But the problem is that they're scared because there's a union called the AFGE, and that the American Federation of Government Employees.
Right.
And what they'll do is they will put pressure. They will put pressure on that congressional representative and sit there and say, you've got to give us the money to be able to do what we need to do. Because if we don't, we can't pay our workers. If we don't pay our workers, guess who doesn't get those votes? You don't get those votes. So, I mean, ask Barbara McCarthy. She did it for years. And therefore, well, that, and so they say, okay, fine.
So we have no Congress then. If the Congress is always on their knees asking for dollars and has no principles, what do we need them for? They're just bankers.
Congress doesn't ask for dollars. They never ask for dollars.
No, giving them out. They're giving out to people for votes. They're giving out to lobbyists for votes. Giving out to the unions.
Who needs them then? A novel idea here that
Lee, this is not a new deal.
I understand.
I get it.
People are pissed already.
People are very upset about it. I wonder what would happen if we ever got rid of
the system is not working for the people
out of the government and everything. And actually, I know that even
not supposed to, Lee.
Sorry, I'll just jump in here because the Republicanism is sort of seeping through the screen. I'll just have a little crack at the Democrats before I lay into the Republicans. Mark, what do you mean that the black people vote as a bloc? That's going to be the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard, and this is the problem. This is why when we had a bit of a dichotomy late last year, I do not understand why people of color are convinced and persuaded that only the Democrats can represent them. That's absolutely absurd. Now, if it is true, which it is, that the majority of people of color vote in one way, that doesn't mean the whole bloc feels that way. Right? Then you say, well, we need to have some more diversity. You're not going to find it in the Democrats because the Democrats only view things in one way. But let me just get back to
I didn't say we're only in the Democratic Party. I actually said that there should be more people in the Republican Party.
I think it's so interesting that 20 years ago, when I was a teenager, how old am I now? Yeah, I was still a teenager 20 years ago. We saw these films come out, like Fahrenheit 9/11 from that absolutely incredible filmmaker Michael Moore, who basically implied that George Bush and Donald Rumsfeld and all those guys had shares in Halliburton, and therefore they were, behind September 11, which is absurd. But that he made that claim. But a more important issue is how the Republicans went after Bill Clinton. They went after him hard. They did not like George Bush Sr. only having one term. The Republicans absolutely abused the political process. They absolutely abused the Department of Justice and the FBI, pretty much exactly what 20 years later Republicans have complained that Democrats are doing to them. Now, I'm not saying that either way is right. It shouldn't have happened. Republicans shouldn't have done it. The Democrats shouldn't have done it. And absolutely, Lee's absolutely correct. The government's not working for the people at all. This is not just in the United States. This sort of shit's going on all over the world. The government's not working for the people because the politicians are out there trying to feather their own nest. And the worst thing about it is, if a politician thinks that he can make $1 million, or she, or they don't care if it's going to cost you $10 million because they're going to make the $1 million. They're out for themselves. And I think that anybody who thinks otherwise is very, very naive. Every single industry that we have is full of people that are trying to feather their own nest. Why would politicians be any different? They can call themselves honorable,
and I have to,
but they're the same bullshit people that the rest of us are.
And this is Steve again.
I have to,
guys, I'm back. Sorry, can you hear me?
So as soon as I had a crack at Republicans, Steve came back.
So I mean, I have to correct myself. The congressional members of the House of Representatives get paid no matter what. They get paid no matter what. So now the House staffers, if a House Speaker is not elected by the 13th of January, they could face having non-pay, and they do the bulk of the work anyways. The congressional members just kind of put their face out there. So basically, what's happening is that there's a lot of things that can't be done. Now, I'll tell you what's happening is that the House committee cannot meet until there is a speaker. So basically, all the oversight committee, the House ethics committee that wants to take on Santos and the rest of that, nobody can meet until there's a speaker. So all the committees are basically down. And what's happening right now is that the congressional members are getting paid to do nothing. Now, Dan, I know that they get paid to do nothing normally, but basically now they really are doing nothing. They're just sitting at home, having a good time, talking to the constituents or doing whatever they do.
The budget's been approved for the next year.
Yeah, the budget's been approved for the next year. That's right. That's right.
Nothing to do. They might as well go golfing.
Let me get back in here. I got cut off on my monologue because I got a work call. But
no problem. What were you going to say?
Well, what I forgot to close out on, and I apologize, folks, is that I think what's interesting though is that this is really a bad sign for the Republicans, because if they are unable to unite on something like this, it's going to give the Democrats an opportunity now in the 2024 elections, if perhaps they're a fractured Republican Party going into a presidential race, and the Democrats maybe unite, whether it's around Joe Biden or another candidate. I think it could be really bad in the next year to 2 years for the Republicans. I mean, clearly the dysfunction that they're having is getting worse. And, I just find it to be, and I think it sends a bad message to the rest of the world that United States is still not, our government is just so broken. I mean, we cannot, this hasn't happened since the 1800s. And every day that we don't have a speaker, people are going in there voting and coming back. They can't do services. They can't act on budgets. They can't invest in local projects. Everything's on a standstill, and it's the beginning of a new year. I mean, this is really.
Steve, I think you're rather overstating it. Let's be.
That's because he's a Democrat.
By the time
I'd be the same thing. I would say the same thing if it was
2024 comes around. By the time 2024 comes around, nobody's going to care about the shenanigans that have occurred in January of 2023. Right? By the time the next election comes up, almost at the end of 2024, no one's going to care about this. It's going to be old news. Okay. When you talk about the division within the Republicans, there's division within the Democrats as well. Mm-hmm. There's division in the Democrats about whether the economic policies being pursued are in the long run going to be good or in the long run going to be bad. There's division about whether or not there should be more attention paid to policing and justice, and those sorts of things, as opposed to just, the race-based stuff we talk about and the sort of woke identity politics that Democrats have been pursuing. And that's going to fracture the Democrats. For the Republicans, Donald Trump had this slogan that he used saying, "I'm going to drain the swamp." And a lot of the Republicans that are opposing or not voting in favor of McCarthy are saying, if we want to drain the swamp, we couldn't possibly put him there. This to me indicates that there's a new breed. There's new blood, new life being put into the Republicans who want to take the Republican Party in a different direction. Now, the Democrats have actually beaten the Republicans at this because they had that new life come in a few years ago when you had people like AOC and members of the so-called squad and other progressives who actually joined the Democrats. Now, many of us on this panel and elsewhere don't agree with their political ideas, but hey, they're there. They should have a voice, and they're able to represent those opinions and that voice in your Congress. So the Republicans are just going through that transition now. I don't think that this is going to be turmoil and mayhem for the Republicans. I think that Democrats it'd be a dangerous thing to underestimate them going into the next election. But I also think that it's very dangerous for the Republicans to underestimate Joe Biden and for them to underestimate what the Democrats are bringing to the table. The greatest thing that will happen for Joe Biden is the fact that as of today, for example, the latest Fed minutes, they're again targeting a 2% inflation rate. They're looking at their economy. They're comparing it to Europe. There are some really strong things that can happen to help the U.S. economy. Now, by the time 2024 rolls around, there's every chance that, hey, Europe will do really well and America won't, but there's every chance that the economy will be doing reasonably well. Yeah. And although that this is subject to some external impetus by the Fed and the market, if the market turns around, Joe Biden gets to walk into 2024 and say, hey, I took over from Donald Trump. Presumably Donald Trump's going to represent the Republicans. I took over from Donald Trump. I've calmed things down. The economy's done well. We had some rough times, but hey, it's full steam ahead. He's got a good argument. Republicans are weak on not actually just poking holes.
Biden will beat Trump in a landslide. That's my prediction. He won't even be close this time. Joe Biden.
This stalemate is the federal government. This is not stopping the cities and states from doing whatever they want. They don't have to sit there and just with their hands folded also. They can continue business as usual, can they not?
Yeah, I don't see why not. The states are not necessarily at
the mercy of the federal government.
They want to do either.
I mean, the federal government shouldn't be involved in most of the stuff they're involved with, anyways.
I think though that when the federal government steps in, it's my opposition. I'm not American, so it doesn't really affect me directly. But my opposition to things like the Build Back Better campaign in relation to infrastructure, something that I actually think American infrastructure really does need funding. But my opposition.
But it's not the federal government should be doing it.
A lot of infrastructure is a state responsibility. So you're absolutely correct. The states can do things, but what they do instead is they rely on the state senators to ask for carve-outs. They ask their state representatives to go in and block legislation from passing, etc., until they've got something for their state. And so the states, in my opinion, are abusing the other states by requiring the federal government to fund these things. It shouldn't be done that way. And
100%.
State representatives should actually be, in my opinion, should be a lot more, a lot greater advocates of the 10th Amendment and states' rights. I don't understand why they would like to centralize power. Power in the United States was never supposed to be centralized like this.
But Shaquille, isn't part of the problem that I hear what you say about the infrastructure, but if I think about things like bridges and the highways, those are actually under the federal jurisdiction because they are federal interstates and all of that. So definitely the states may have some rules in that, but I do know that a lot of the rules.
I'm not talking about federal infrastructure that should be funded. Obviously, that's a federal responsibility. I'm talking about infrastructure that should be funded by state and local governments. The road, correct me if I'm wrong, Lee, you're in New York. The road between New York City and Long Island, that's a state road. That's not a federal road. And honestly, I've been to third world countries and had better roads than that. I was embarrassed for the people that were in the car with me because I just, you could not avoid potholes. It was just impossible. That trip was actually, there are other bad roads in America, but that trip was actually the worst drive that I think I've ever had in a Western country. That should be fixed, absolutely. Now, whether that be a federal or state responsibility isn't the issue. But what I'm saying is that to ask the federal government to step in and provide funding for state infrastructure when some states have pissed money up against the wall and other states have acted responsibly.
Some states.
So then what you do is you give those states that have actually acted responsibly less money and give the irresponsible ones more money.
Well, and you know what's interesting about that whole situation, Shaquille, is that climate change is being blamed for those potholes. Now, I'm going to tell you something about this bullcrap. Is basically what they're saying you need to give us more money to combat climate change, including infrastructure money, so we can do that. And you know what they're going to do with that? They're going to put more asphalt on the roads. It's like, where's your head? The asphalt is basically a freaking petrol. It's a fossil fuel. So you're going to take asphalt, you're going to put it over top of there, which of course will contribute to global warming, whatever the hell else you want to call it. But that's part of the money that's going in to combat climate change. So it goes round and round and round with this whole situation.
That's why I rail. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. That is why I rail so harshly against all this climate change crap. Okay, there is no question. It's beyond question that the climate is changing. Some of that is just because of a natural phenomenon, right? The climate's going to change.
Weather.
Some of it is arguably because of, especially local climates, is arguably because of what we as humans are doing. What I really detest, this is the reason why I rail against you so much, Mark. I hate it when an issue that is really important gets hijacked and gets turned into something else. So when the Sierra Club, for example, is supposed to be an environmental organization, I want to talk about abortion. Abortion doesn't have anything to do with the environment. It has nothing to do with climate change. Don't try to make out that it is. There are issues in the United States with people of color and especially Black African Americans and how they're treated. Of course, there are disparities there. And of course, these issues need to be addressed. But don't sit there and tell me that only Marxism is the way to fix this. That the solution for this problem is the same solution that has been offered by big government for every other problem in the last 100 years.
Yeah,
every single problem for the last 100 years is that
first off, as I've said it several times, and I've said it several more times, I hear what you're saying, Shaquille, but if there are issues, whether it's Detroit in the whole Flint area, or whether it's Louisiana, and whether it's a number of other places that are significantly minority and significantly poor, and there are documented evidences of places that those places were targeted because of their status in the economy and everything, then that is why the whole notion of environmental racism came up. And Ben Chavis was one of the founders, and actually grew up in Washington when that dump took place.
Mark, you can say that as much as you like, but deep down, that the reality is that these environmentalists that are running around using this talking point about environmental racism, they don't give a shit about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about our audience. They don't care about the people on this panel. They care about themselves. So they think that if they can use the right words and say the right things, they can use it, or environmental racism. So therefore, we're going to fix it by increasing tax on the rich.
I can't say that. First off, I can't say that they don't care when I just had one on my show yesterday that was, and if you want to go back and watch it, the gentleman has formed his own organization. He's involved in both the trans and LGBT community as well as the local states. So Chester was on the show yesterday, and you can go back and watch the interview and see how we got involved in that.
We see international groups like the World Economic Forum, like the United Nations, like the European Union, who are centralizing power to themselves to dictate to countries what they should do. Do you really think that somebody in Brussels or somebody sitting in Geneva gives a shit about what's happening to you in Detroit? Do you really think they care? You've got to be delusional to think that. It's just not true.
No, they don't care.
They do care. They just don't care as much as you think they would care.
They don't care at all. They don't care at all. And let me tell you, if you're dealing
you don't believe in Greta Thunberg,
you've got countries who are struggling to get clean water because other countries' industrial waste is going into those waterways. That's affecting far more people of color than a small group of people in a Western country, okay, where the Western country has the resources and the power to fix the issue. It's not something the international community is going to get involved in. It's just a nonsense.
Well, the thing is, you're so wrong on the issue, Shaquille. It's not funny because the thing is, if you ever bother to read studies, anthropomorphic causes of climate change, it's 97% of the scientists and all the studies agree. I hate to say it, it's your fault, dude, because you're dumping all your garbage into the air. Okay,
Nicholas, what you were talking about?
Skill is
what you were talking about is
Australia supplies China with all the
skill is an environmentalist.
Scientists have admitted that they provide science and amp things up in order to give politicians the things that they need to pass legislation about things that they don't know and understand. Look, the politicians, who are mostly lawyers, barely understand the law. They don't understand the Constitution clearly because they wouldn't have so many things struck down by the Supreme Court. So you actually think that a bunch of politicians, a bunch of lawyers understand climate change? No way. You think they understand the science? There's no way in the world that a bunch of
lawyers can digest information rapidly.
Nick and Shaquille, a quick pivot here and everything, but it still deals with the international community, because there is a country that we have been very much historically friends with and all of that, and definitely have had some relationships with them, and definitely some wonderful relationships, and even if helped one of their dictators stay in power, and now the son is back in power. But apparently the Philippines is raising some concerns because they have agreed to set up direct communication with China, because they definitely want to get involved in that whole relationship. And they had a meeting between the current president, Ferdinand Marcos, and the Chinese leader, Xi Jinping. And both leaders have reaffirmed that their countries will respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. So do we need to be worried about this alliance that might be happening in Southeast Asia and everything, and when the Philippines have been a historical
what are they supposed to do? The big dragon is right next door to them. Okay, and let's get real. India has relationships with China, big time relationships.
Yeah, they're playing both sides of the fence.
So does Australia. Your mate over there sells them coal to burn all over the world and sells them minerals and everything. So they love going down Australian
what is Europe?
Australia has a close relationship with China.
Let's just ask Sasha. Sasha, what's Europe relying on now that they're not buying? You corrected me yesterday that they're not buying their natural gas from Russia. What are they relying on now? Did you say coal? By any chance?
Well, they burn coal. They buy all your garbage. The reason Australia exists as a country is China buys all your minerals. Other than that,
I mean, that's part of what they hold. That's part of what they say. The reason of the talks.
The reason why China is going leaps and bounds ahead is not because China is some evil country that's out to take over the world. That's what people think. China is just acting in their own self-interest. If you were China, if we were all sitting here and we were Chinese, we would be doing exactly what China is doing. But here we are sitting in the West, right, in the luxury that we have all enjoyed over our lifetimes, all right, especially you boomers over there, okay? And what have we seen? We have seen America, Canada, Australia, the Five Eyes nations, Western Europe all sit there and do nothing to improve relationships around the world, to do absolutely nothing to increase trade around the world, offload it all to China, and then criticize China when they do the only things that we've let them do.
Yeah, but that's what I was going to get to, because apparently the Chinese-Philippine agreement wants to deal with some stuff that we've been talking about, but we want to deal with, because both sides have agreed that they want to resume talks on oil and gas exploration in the South China Sea, and they also want to discuss cooperation on areas including, guess what? Solar, wind, electric vehicles, and nuclear power. Isn't that some of the same things that we've wanted as well? And all in that space. So whether we like it or not, and whether it will work or not, because I have heard you, Shaquille, say that
if it's not going to work. Hang on, wait. What do you mean if it's going to work or not? If it's not going to work, then why do it? Imagine if you went into a hospital and the doctor said, "Look, have some chicken soup," and you say, "I've broken my leg," and he goes, "Yeah, have some chicken soup. Will that help?" Well, it might not. Who knows? But have some chicken soup anyway. You're going to sit there and try to go to another hospital, aren't you? You're going to feel
part of what you have said, Shaquille, is that there are parts of the country that may not work. So I agree with you on that. So maybe we need to explore hydro in those areas that have more water and everything. And there are places that the wind might work better than other places. And solar might work. And definitely we've seen things with the electric vehicles. I think there was a recent incident with Tesla where they were driving and it had a major crash of some sort. I think that was like a day or two ago that was all over the news and all in that space. So I definitely think that there is some of that trial and error with any research and everything. That's just the nature of research.
Yeah, but you know what you do? If you want to have trial and error, get some rich people, right? Like Nikola Tesla did and Edison did when Edison burnt down JP Morgan's house, right? Get some rich people to take the risk and let them benefit from it. Don't push all of that risk onto the public and force them to take that risk and then go, well, it's for climate change. You must be racist. You're a sexist homophobe because you don't care about the planet. As the government sits there and pushes a plan that they know that they don't work. The American Enterprise Institute said they don't work. Dan, go for it. I'll shut up.
Well, you forgot misogynistic. You forgot that word.
Well, guys, let's come back to the show.
What was that, Dan? We forgot what.
Yeah, I was actually going to come back to something that
among all the the things that they call people, right?
There are different terms that they use. There's no doubt. I was actually going to toss it to Sasha because I know he's got his show, and definitely that'll be coming our way on Friday. But our good friend, and I'm being very sarcastic when I say that, Mr. Putin and everything is over there having conversations with Turkey's Tayyip Erdogan because he's saying that Russia is open to dialogue over the Ukraine, but that Kiev would have to accept the loss of territories claimed by Russia. I find that very much funny and hilarious and everything. But Vladimir Putin has reaffirmed Russia's openness to a serious dialogue, provided that the Kiev authorities fulfill the well-known and repeatedly voiced requirements and take into account the new territorial realities, is what the Kremlin has said. So, Sasha,
before Sasha gets into that, I think it is really important to understand. Hold on a second, Shaquille. Let me finish. This is what's happening. Russia is into Turkey because basically the deserters, the people that are getting out of Russia, want to go to Croatia. This is the path, one of many paths, that they have to go through to get from Georgia all the way to Croatia. And that's what Croatia has stated, that they will accept all Russians that want to escape Russia through Georgia to be able to escape the military conscription, whatever you want to call it.
Defectors.
That's right.
Defectors.
This is not just, you can see as it follows here. This is the elevation. This is the elevation they got to go through to be able to make that work. There's a little bit here through the Bosporus Straits, and then they go right back into that. And you see all the different countries they have to go through. So they have to go that way, or they have to fly from Georgia to Croatia, one of the two. So, I mean, this is I'm telling you, this is what Putin is discussing with Erdogan, and Erdogan is sitting back going, go screw yourself. I don't care if they come through.
I'm going to take control over here, guys, but Erdogan is playing both sides of the fence. He wants to buy more oil as well, but he also wants to sell weapons to Ukraine. So many of these countries are, doing that, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I mean, this guy's a ruthless dictator, and he needs to be called out. But real quickly, just want to shift into a couple of other issues. We just want to say that.
I'd like to hear. Well, wait a minute, Steve. I'd like to hear from Sasha on this. What's Sasha,
please? Yeah,
because we asked him to talk.
Sasha, please.
The situation is very simple. Putin is desperate, and he's willing to anybody who is going to listen to him for more than 5 minutes. Erdogan is one of very few people left. As you noticed, Emmanuel Macron has stopped calling Putin. No more calls from Macron, no more calls from anybody else. So the Erdogan, who is, by the way, coming from the same background as Putin, he's also just a bandit. But that's why he knows how to talk to Putin. He knows Putin's weaknesses. He knows Putin really respect the power. So when Erdogan talks to Putin, even if you would see the pictures when they are together, Erdogan is as a giant, 2 meters high, and Putin is sitting somewhere on the background that one hardly can even see what it is, what kind of creature is that. So Erdogan has absolutely mastered his way to deal with that Putin, the creature. So on a battlefield, there is a complete domination of Ukrainians who are not attacking Russian forces. They're just waiting for them to move from one place to another or to barracks with next ammunition and just mercilessly keep killing them. Every day, 400 or 500 Russians are being killed. It's just very simple mathematics. So they will go now probably to continue their mobilization. They will bring more meat to the battlefield to be killed. Okay, that's their choice. And I must admit, I'm very depressed that Russian people who in history, we know that there are very fearless people who were fighting all kind of wars with all kind of people around the globe, but they're so fearful of this old maniac. It's just incredible. I understand if they would be fearful of Stalin, who was killing millions and millions of people. Now, Putin is not killing. He doesn't have enough troops to do this job of killing millions and millions of Russians. So he's not doing that. So what are they scared so much? They're going to the battlefield of Ukraine when it's just a matter of 2-3 days until they will be killed there. Now, if they are not going to fight and they're saying, sorry, I decline, I'm not going there. So they will get, say, maybe months and a half in jail, but they will be alive. On the other hand, they're willing to go all the way to Ukraine on the battlefield when it's just a matter of time. That's why they're desperate to make this phone calls using their cell phones.
Yeah. And Sasha, just one last point, and I'll turn it back over to
say goodbye to their life.
Yeah, I know. Say goodbye. I mean, but Bakhmut is a perfect example of what's going to happen to the Russians. They're trying to take that. They're trying to take that town, that village, basically. And they are fighting. I mean, the Ukrainians are fighting for every square foot of that, or square meter of that area. I mean, the Russians are having severe casualties, tanks and everything else, because the Ukrainians are going to go in there. They're just going to do. They're going to do this war of attrition. They're going to do sapping, and they're going to do whatever they need to do to make that happen. So yeah, you're right, Sasha. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Steve. I'm sorry.
also there are more arms on its way to Ukraine now. The French will supply the light tanks in some quantity, and there's other countries. Germans are still sitting on the face with their tanks, Leopards. I think they're waiting until French will send their light tanks, so they will say, "Well, look at the French, what they've done. They've done horrible things. They're helping Ukraine to kill Russian boys." Okay, so now we have no choice. We will do the same thing.
Well, taking back just a couple of issues we didn't get to, Mark. I just want to.
I was going to toss an issue to you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. And actually, I had two things I was going to bring up, including that Labor Party. But I know you've got some stuff as well. But I know one of the things that's probably going to be put out in the world court or in the world like public opinion is why it took so long for us to get a certain basketball player away from the Russians, and somebody else did some protests and got arrested, and they got out in like 3 weeks because they were having some issues around their women's rights there in Iran, and they did arrest a prominent actor, and now this prominent actor, Tarani Al-Desta, is out after 3 weeks and all of that. So I'm sure the world court of opinion is going to be going like, how come y'all took all so long to get her out, and this lady only took 3 weeks? So anybody got any thoughts around this? Because I'm going like, wait a minute.
Different country, different personalities.
Different issues.
And different issues. Probably around the different issues as well, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in that sense. The other thing I was going to bring up, and I'm going to toss it to Steve, is that we were talking about the checkbooks here in the United States, but the labor leader there in England pledged on Thursday, which is today, to end Britain's quote unquote sticking plaster politics if his party wins power in the next election, reassuring critics he would not open the checkbook to tackle a myriad of crises buffering that particular country. So I think that's his take on saying that maybe that there's some bland promises that Rishi Sunak has made and all in that space. And I do know that there is a whole kind of thing between Labour and other parties there in Britain. Nikhil, you're more of an expert. What are your thoughts on this whole segment?
I know more about American politics, but let's just have a show of hands. The Labour Party is a centre-left party. Put your hand up if you believe the Labour Party, a centre-left political party, is not going to open up the checkbook if they want power. Has anybody ever heard of a left party that's not going to spend money? Seriously.
Yeah, they'll spend money.
That's on both sides, though, Shaquille. The right also.
Yeah, the right does as well. But the right does the right does as well. But they don't normally go into a campaign saying, "Look, we're not going to spend money at all." What they say is, we're not going to spend money on the things that the people generally care about, healthcare, education, that sort of stuff, because it's a waste of money. We're going to spend some money on stuff that you're not really going to see, like defense and all these other things.
Well, apparently he's saying that he really loves that whole green thing because Labor has apparently been courting business to help pay for the investment it wants to pludge into its green and innovation plans. And while the party will strive for a closer relationship with the European Union, its public message is clear that it'll make Brexit work rather than reverse it.
A left party that wants to get involved in green stuff. Again, I'll ask the question: do you think they're doing it because they care about the environment? Or do you think these politicians are doing it because by doing it, they get more power? Well, what do you reckon?
They care about.
Have you met many politicians? Have you met ones that actually care?
Not one.
They do care in person.
Not one that lives by what they say.
Really?
Well, I can't say that. I mean, Steve cares. I can say that there are a number in Durham that care. Leonardo Williams cares. So I can't say that they're not politicians that don't care.
Mark, Steve cares right now, but Washington's rubbing off on him. We're going to lose Steve. Steve's going to be,
I have fallen into the spot. All I know is I may have to move. I want to be a U.S. congressman in the next 2 years. So I may have to move because I'm just going to
Yay, you, Steve. Yay, you.
I belong there.
There you go. So it did rub off on you. So basically, you got some on you. Get it off.
I already know 7 congressmen and their phone numbers. Okay, I mean this is so much fun, and you don't.
That's it, Steve. 7. Did you want to buy Rolodex? I can hook you up.
Hold on. What do I hear? I hear name dropping.
No, but let me tell you why I love Congress so much.
Hold on.
Chris, we don't
Why
want
me,
names,
Nichols?
Chris.
There it is.
No,
Chris, we don't want names. We want phone numbers.
let me tell you why I want to be.
You
a
know
Congressman.
Joe Biden's phone number because he doesn't know it.
Let's hear what Steve wants to be a congressperson.
First of all, it's a great place for me because it's a great place to network. I mean, you don't really work that hard, so you just go around the halls, you meet people, it creates a relationship. You get to work out at a nice workout facility. You get some good meals.
Are you taping this?
Wait a
Are
minute.
you taping this?
Steve?
We want to have this as part of his campaign.
Steve, can you explain why they have their own workout facility? Why we have the Fed taxpayers have to pay for that?
$1 budget, Lee.
Well, you got to
Listen,
keep healthy in here.
what you're telling the audience at the panelists today is that you would like to be a U.S. congressman because that way you will get a better pay, better conditions than you would ever get in the private sector.
I don't know about that, but you do get paid pretty well. No, but I mean,
Contractors. I'd love to be a contractor.
But honestly, what is the most exciting about it is that you get to meet people from all around the country, and you should go in there trying to do something for the country. So yeah, I've always wanted to serve the country, and I think that I want to go to the United States Congress one day because I want to serve the country.
In the military.
Steve, I'd love to see you in the U.S. Congress personally. But personally, Steve, I'd love to see you in the U.S. Congress because I think you've got a great heart. I think that you are trying your very best to do what's the best interests of the people of North Carolina, where you are in Raleigh. I think you'd be a great addition to the U.S. Congress. But
and I sleep with this, my Constitution.
The political system in this country.
What do you live by it, Steve?
Unfortunately, corrupts the good intentions of so many people. The people that go in there wanting to do the right things, they very rarely get.
Steve, do you open it?
Is that they end up being outvoted by people that have taken lobby money or whatever. That's the unfortunate reality of the
well, I mean, part of the problem, guys. On a more serious note, here's the problem: when these guys get in there, and this is a really serious thing to talk about. Real quickly, I just want to say that Daryl Hamlin is getting better, which is good. California's in a state of emergency because of a rainstorm. And we're going to talk about other issues. I'm probably going to be out tomorrow doing a test for PBS's new show, State Line, and I've been honored that I think I've been asked to maybe hopefully participate in that show. But I may not be able to hear tomorrow. But the bottom line is when they get in there, they have to start raising immediately money so they can get reelected. So this is the problem: is that a congressional term should be 4 years, not 2 years. Or they should stagnate.
Term limits would be a great thing, but it's not just
Steve. Is the purpose of getting elected to get reelected?
Well, I mean that's part of the problem.
Well, because special interests are coming in on both sides. You don't understand it. These receptions I went to are packed with lobbyists.
No, they're totally packed with lobbyists.
I understand, Steve. If they do a good job of what they're supposed to be doing, why would they not get reelected anyways? Why is it just campaigning from day one?
Yeah, but
just do your job.
Performance. As soon as they win their campaign, it's not just here in the United States; it's everywhere. And it's
no, I understand, but is that right, Mark?
As soon as
is that why they got elected?
And I have a problem with that, and I agree. But I was going to bring up something, and I wanted to hear maybe Shaquille because he's more of our, and Sasha if he's got some thoughts. But we talk a lot about what we need to do with our government institutions. One of those is the Supreme Court.
Get rid of them. That's a simple answer.
Well, one of them is the Supreme Court, and apparently the Israeli new government is got a plan where they are going to change and overhaul their justice system, and they're actually saying that they might weaken their Supreme Court over there in Israel. So I was wondering, is this going to be a new trend where we're going to have justice departments around the world overhauled? And maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need to follow the path of Israel.
This is one of the rare times I'm going to agree with Mr. Trust Fund Baby over there. Of course not. And why are you comparing yourself to Israel? Does America want to run like Israel runs? Is that what you're after?
No.
Maybe you can fight Canada and you can turn Canada into Palestine. What are you talking about? And I might just add in relation to Israel how upset they are, especially at President Zelensky, for not voting against this UN proposal to have an official inquiry into what's happening in the Gaza Strip. This is clearly a geographical issue that's theirs, but it also affects most people in the planet. Every government's involved in it. And, everybody who has any kind of religious or any kind of Abrahamic religious belief wants to see, the safety and security of Jerusalem and other surrounding holy areas. This is an issue. It needs to be
but it's minor compared to Ukraine. I mean, if you can't compare the Gaza Strip to Ukraine. I mean,
I'll tell you what I think the difference is there.
Russia did to Bucha.
I'll tell you what I think the difference is. The difference with the Ukraine is that if we in the West decided to put an end to this, it would end. If we decided that the Ukrainian people deserve better than what they're getting from us, this would be over. Russia can't take, even if you thought Russia could take on one country, one Western country, they can't take us all on. Russia would never be able to survive this. The issues with Palestine and Israel have been going on for decades.
No, it's been going on.
And it needs to at some point be resolved.
Centuries.
No, it's kind of like the issues over there with Ireland and Scotland and Britain.
The uptick in the level of
decades as
been
well.
going on over there between Palestine and Israel has been happening for decades.
No, there's several places where it's been happening for decades. I'm not arguing with you on that. Hey, I know we're going to go to Steve for closeout, and we've also got Wynn Charles getting ready to do her show around cerebral palsy and disability community that comes up at 11. But I do have to let Chris know that he will be glad to know that France is in the news again because Iran, yes, I did say Iran, another one of those Middle East countries, has lashed out at France over a cartoon that they published, which they said was insulting Carmenia. So they were saying that it was insulting to one of their religious leaders and all of that. So they
Mark, why do people care about cartoons? Why do people care about what's in a cartoon? Just get over it. It's a cartoon.
Hang on, Lee. Hang on. Hold up, Lee. Hold up.
Therefore what, Nick? So what? Get over it.
The Islamic community do not like, and it's forbidden for them to depict Prophet Muhammad.
So don't do it then.
And other types of cartoons are not allowed by Muslims. And they take exception to France, who's become very, very secular, and some of the things that they have released over the years has been offensive to them. But can I just say, this is why when Sasha has alleged that I'm a Republican, in spirit at least, I'm not. I'm a liberal. I think that the conservatives are boring by nature. And, it's not that long ago that when Sinead O'Connor was singing a few songs, American evangelicals, as well as the religious right in the UK, were burning her CDs. How dare she sing these anti-religious things? So, it goes both ways. If you really want conservatism, you just have to look how the right acts when they're in power. Right? They seize power and they dictate to you what you can and can't do because they know better. Exactly the same as what the left does. The left seizes power and dictates to you what you must do and what you can't do because they know better. I personally believe that I know better what's for me. You go away and leave me alone.
I'm going to toss it to Steve right now. I was just going to mention one other quick thing in the news. Apparently, the Peru police were using tear gas to clear protests over after a Machu Picchu was evacuated. I do know that is a very popular tourism area and all of that because of its connection, I believe, to the Aztecs. Either the Aztecs or the Incans. I can't remember which one, but it's one of those two.
Well, folks, it's amazing. We're going to get back. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I'll be back or probably next week unless I can chime on quickly tomorrow. Real quickly, we will be updating you on the state of the speaker's race as we monitor the situation. It's going to be a very interesting few days in the United States Congress. Meanwhile, I ended my day yesterday at an economic forecast from the Raleigh Chamber. And interesting to say, most of the economists, what was interesting is that many of the speakers kept putting a disclaimer, I'm not an economist. I cannot take responsibility for anything that I say because nobody wants to be held hostage to a bad economy. But Chris Chung, the head of economic development for North Carolina, really had a compelling message about the billions of dollars of investment that's being made in North Carolina from companies all over the world. And then from entrepreneur Scott Wingo as well, who talked about startups. And I think one interesting debate that's surfacing here where we live in North Carolina is how many big dollar incentives do we give to the big companies at the expense of small businesses and startups, which I think is an issue we might want to talk about on World Edition. But very exciting times. Folks, we'll be back this week for another edition of Pod Roku TV's edition. Be safe wherever you are and hope you've gotten off to a great 2023. Thank you.
I think we've actually lost Mark and Nick, so forgive me.